how I managed to pay off $40,000 in student debt in 3 years. 3 years ago, I was dead broke, unemployed, and drowning in $40,000 of student debt. I had no job, no savings, and no real plan, just a constant gnawing anxiety about how I'd ever dig myself out. Fast forward to today, my student loans are completely paid off. No debt, no interest, no looming payments hanging over my head. And before you assume I inherited money, won the lottery, or sold an organ, nope. This was pure luck, grind, and a little bit of insanity. Here, how it happened. Year 1, absolute rock bottom. When I graduated, I thought I'd land a decent job within a few months. Spoiler, I did not. The job market wasn't just bad, it was brutal. I applied everywhere, from corporate offices to retail gigs, and got rejection after rejection. My bank account was in the single digits, and my student loan payments were about to kick in. I was panicking. At one point, I was seriously considering moving back in with my parents, but before I could, the luck happened. I randomly bumped into an old classmate who mentioned that his company was hiring. It wasn't my dream job, hell, it wasn't even in my field, but it was a job. The pay was decent, the benefits were okay, and most importantly, I could finally start making payments on my loans. That was the moment I went into full financial survival mode. Year 1, learning how to not be broke. Landing that job was a huge relief, but let's be real, it wasn't like I was suddenly rolling in money. My salary barely covered rent, food, and the minimum student loan payments. I was making progress, technically, but at this rate, I'd be paying off my debt for the next 15 years. I knew I needed a plan. Step 1, figure out where the hell my money was going. I downloaded a budgeting app, which, fun fact, made me want to cry, and started tracking every single dollar. Within a month, I realized I was burning way too much on things I thought were necessities. Eating out, random Amazon purchases, subscriptions I forgot existed. It all added up. So I made some brutal cuts. Coffee? Goodbye, $5 lattes. I bought a cheap coffee maker and forced myself to become a homebrew guy. Streaming services? Canceled everything except the one I actually used. Eating out? Only if someone else was paying. Clothes? Unless my current wardrobe literally fell apart, I wasn't buying anything new. Did I feel a little miserable at first? Absolutely. But after a few months, I adjusted. I started cooking more, found free entertainment, turns out, walks exist, and even got into the super fun habit of checking my bank account without feeling sick. Progress. But even with all these changes, my debt still felt like an impossible mountain. I was throwing every spare dollar at it, but the number barely moved. That's when I realized cutting expenses wasn't enough. I needed to make more money. Year 2, the hustle begins. At this point, I had cut my expenses as much as humanly possible. But no matter how many PB&J sandwiches I ate or how many times I convinced myself that walking is basically free cardio, I realized I wasn't going to get out of debt just by saving. I needed more income. That's when I got into side hustles. It started small. I found a couple of freelance gigs online, nothing glamorous, just basic stuff like proofreading, writing simple articles, and even some data entry. The pay was laughably low at first, but every extra $50 or $100 I made went straight to my loans. Then came the real game changer, overtime at my actual job. One day, my boss casually mentioned that they were looking for people to take on extra hours. The pay rate was slightly higher, and since I was already at work most of the time anyway, I figured, why not? I started saying yes to everything. Late shifts, yes. Early shifts, also yes. Weekend shifts, bring it on. I was practically living at the office, surviving on caffeine and sheer determination. Was it fun? Absolutely not. But every extra paycheck meant I could attack my debt harder. At the end of my second year, I had managed to knock my total balance down from $40,000 to around $18,000. That was the first time I truly thought, holy crap, I might actually pull this off. Year 2, the hustle begins, but so does the burnout. At first, picking up side gigs felt like a genius move. I was finally making extra money instead of just surviving paycheck to paycheck. But here's the thing no one tells you about side hustles. They suck the life out of you. My weekdays turned into a brutal routine. 6:30 a.m. Wake up, chug homemade coffee, eat whatever was cheapest. 8:00 a.m. 5:00 p.m. Work my full-time job, pretending I wasn't completely exhausted. 6:00 p.m. 10:00 p.m. Freelance work, proofreading, basic graphic design, which I taught myself from YouTube, random tasks from gig apps. 11:00 p.m. Collapse into bed, rinse, repeat. Weekends, not for relaxing. If I wasn't doing overtime at my day job, I was glued to my laptop, trying to scrape together an extra $50 wherever I could. And yeah, my bank account was finally moving in the right direction, but my mental health, not so much. There were nights when I stared at my laptop screen, absolutely fried, wondering if all of this was even worth it. There were weeks when I felt like I was working nonstop and barely making a dent in my debt. The excitement of earning extra money wore off fast when I realized I was exhausted all the time. But the real test came when I almost quit everything. The breaking point. One Friday night, after another brutal week of overtime and side gigs, I got hit with a surprise expense, a $600 car repair. I remember sitting in my apartment, staring at the bill, feeling like someone had punched me in the stomach. $600 wasn't the end of the world, but at that moment, it felt like all my hard work had been for nothing. I could have used that money to pay down my loans. Instead, it was going straight to some mechanic who probably thought I was an idiot for not knowing how cars worked. I was so close to saying, screw it, what's the point? But then I checked my bank account. For the first time ever, I actually had enough savings to cover an emergency without going into panic mode. Yeah, it sucked. Yeah, I felt like I was back at square one. But then it hit me, I was. A year ago, a $600 expense would have destroyed me. Now, it was just a temporary setback. That's when I realized, this grind is working. The unexpected jackpot. After the whole car repair fiasco, I doubled down. I kept grinding, kept saying yes to overtime, and kept doing freelance work, even when it felt like my brain was melting. But after months of the same exhausting routine, something insane happened. I got a bonus. Not just any bonus, a huge one. Apparently, my company had one of those profit-sharing programs that I had completely forgotten about. Since I'd been working overtime like a lunatic, my payout was way bigger than expected. I still remember refreshing my bank app and seeing an extra $5,200 land in my account. 5,000. For a moment, I just sat there, staring at the number like it was a hallucination. My first thought, did payroll mess up? My second thought, don't spend IT, don't be dumb. I immediately threw every single dollar at my student loans. Just like that, my balance dropped from around $18,000 to $12,800. That was the first time I truly felt like I was winning. The ripple effect. That bonus wasn't life-changing, but it was a psychological game-changer. For the first time, I wasn't just chipping away at my debt, I was crushing it. I started seeing an actual finish line. That feeling, pure motivation. So I went harder. I negotiated a raise at work. Shocker, it worked. I found better-paying freelance gigs instead of wasting time on lowball offers. I even sold random stuff I didn't need, old electronics, clothes, anything that wasn't essential. Every extra dollar went straight to the loans. No vacations, no splurges, no I deserve this purchases, just pure ruthless focus. By the time I hit the 3-year mark, my student debt was down to a single final payment. And that was a moment worth celebrating. The feeling of progress. After that bonus hit my account, something inside me clicked. It wasn't just about the extra $5,000. It was the realization that this grind wasn't pointless, that all those sleepless nights and caffeine-fueled weekends had a purpose. I wasn't just working to survive anymore. I was working to win, to take back control of my life. But let me tell you, progress felt slow. Even with the extra money from the bonus, I still had over $12,000 in loans to pay off. It seemed like such a huge number, like the finish line was just an illusion. I had moments when I thought I'd never get there. There were days when I felt defeated, like I was spinning my wheels. On the surface, everything was going well. My overtime was paying off, I was getting more freelance work, and my balance was shrinking. But on the inside, I was exhausted. It was a constant battle between what I knew I had to do and the fatigue that was slowly eating away at my motivation. Every time I made progress, it felt like I hit another wall. Why does this matter? Why am I doing this? That question haunted me. Moment of doubt. Few months into this relentless routine, I hit what I can only describe as my rock-bottom burnout. I had been working so hard for so long that I couldn't even remember what life was like without a to-do list constantly running through my mind. I was losing my patience, snapping at people for no reason, and feeling like I couldn't escape my own exhaustion. I remember one evening, I was sitting in my tiny apartment, surrounded by empty coffee cups and half-finished freelance projects, and I just broke. I sat on my couch, holding my phone in my hands, staring at my student loan account, knowing I had the money to make another big payment, but I just couldn't do it. I thought about quitting. I thought about throwing in the towel and going back to being a regular person with a normal life. The idea of a vacation, or even just a day off, sounded like a luxury I'd never be able to afford. I felt like I was stuck in a never-ending loop of grinding for a future that seemed so far away. It didn't even feel real anymore. Reigniting the fire. But then, in the middle of my breakdown, something hit me. I was already doing it. I had spent so much time thinking about the end goal that I lost sight of how far I had already come. I wasn't stuck. I was in the process. Every long hour I spent working, every sacrifice I made was adding up. It wasn't about the $12,000. It was about the fact that I had already knocked over half of it out of my life. That was the victory. I was already winning. That moment of clarity sparked something in me. I realized I didn't need to be perfect. I didn't need to be a machine. But I did need to keep going, keep pushing. So I doubled down again. I pushed through the mental fog, the frustration, the desire to just take a damn break, and I made it my mission to finish strong. Year 2, the feeling of progress. After that bonus hit my account, something inside me clicked. It wasn't just about the extra $5,000. It was the realization that this grind wasn't pointless. All those sleepless nights, all those late hours at the office and in front of my laptop, they were finally adding up. I wasn't just working to survive anymore. I was working to win, to get out of this never-ending debt trap. But let me tell you, even though I felt like I was doing everything right, progress still felt slow. At the end of the second year, my loan balance was down to $5,000. $5,000. That was all that was left between me and financial freedom. I remember the moment I saw that number on my phone screen. I was at work, mindlessly scrolling through my banking app, and then boom. The loan balance had dropped under $6,000. My heart skipped a beat. For the first time in 2 years, it finally felt real. But here's the thing. While that milestone was huge, I also realized how exhausting this journey had been. Every dollar I made had gone straight toward my loans. I didn't buy anything for myself. I didn't take a vacation. I lived in a constant state of focus, always thinking about that next payment. It felt like I had been running a marathon at full speed without a finish line. And yeah, even with just $5,000 left, I felt the mental weight of it all. $5,000. It wasn't an insurmountable mountain, but it still felt like a really, really steep hill. A struggle and the rewards. But as I kept chipping away at it, I began to see the bigger picture. I wasn't just making payments, I was gaining control. The small wins added up. Each side hustle, each overtime shift, and every little freelance job was like a victory in itself. I won't lie, though, there were still moments of doubt. I remember sitting at my desk one afternoon, looking at that $5,000 number and thinking, why is this taking so long? Why was I still so far from being free? I was tired. I wanted a break. I wanted to buy something nice for myself, anything that wasn't just more borrowing, but instead I just kept going. I reminded myself that I had already come so far. I wasn't where I started, and that gave me the strength to keep moving forward. The final push. As I neared the final stretch, with just $5,000 standing between me and complete freedom, it felt like I could almost taste it. But the thing is, this last bit was the hardest. I had been working for 2 years straight with barely a moment to myself. I had sacrificed so much. My friends, my family, even my mental health at times. And now, I was so close to the finish line that I could almost hear the victory music. But that didn't mean the road was easy. I still had moments where I felt like quitting, where I'd ask myself, why did I start this in the first place? There were days when I'd get home from work, sit down at my desk, and just stare at the number, trying to figure out how I was going to make it happen. But every time I looked at the remaining balance, I reminded myself of the big picture. I had already come so far. This last $5,000, that was just a matter of time. The moment it's all paid off. And then it happened. One day, I logged into my bank app and saw the number $0 staring back at me. 0. My heart skipped a beat. The weight I had been carrying for years, the loans, the stress, the constant sacrifice, was finally gone. I had done it. For the first time in 2 years, I could breathe. I could actually enjoy my life again without that crushing debt looming over me. I remember just sitting there for a minute, completely still, trying to process it. I'd been so focused on the grind, on making payments, that I hadn't even stopped to think about what would happen when it was all over. But now I was free. The aftermath, what's next? The next few days were a blur of relief, disbelief, and celebration. I didn't go out on some big vacation or buy anything extravagant. I just took a moment to enjoy being in the present. No more loan payments, no more paycheck-to-paycheck life, no more stress about money. But the most amazing thing, I felt like I had finally earned the right to relax and enjoy the small things in life. It wasn't just about the freedom from debt, it was about the freedom I had gained mentally. Looking back, I can honestly say this was the best decision I've ever made. The hardest part wasn't paying off the loans, it was staying committed. The discipline, the mindset, and the drive to keep going even when it seemed impossible. If there's one thing I want you to take away from my story, it's this: you can do it. If I, a regular person who didn't start with any fancy advantages, can tackle $40,000 in student debt in 3 years, then so can you. It's going to suck. It's going to be tough, but every step forward brings you closer to the life you want. And when you finally reach that goal, when you finally get to say goodbye to the debt that's been holding you back for so long, it's worth every sacrifice.